Number 8 of my 2025 non negotiables. Why do we let them? It's so funny. Oftentimes, when people do us wrong, our first inclination is to, why would they? How could they do this to me? And if you know, Kiki Palmer was recently on the Jennifer Hudson show, and she was talking about how she is the queen of a reframe. And so oftentimes, that's my inclination as well. And this is something that I had to learn because no one just decides to start cutting up and acting out of nowhere. Something has to transpire to make them act and behave that way. Now, that doesn't excuse the behavior. As I often say, I can honor the emotions, but I'm not going to tolerate the behavior because, as we've said before, when people show you who they are, you got to believe them, especially when that behavior is consistent. So, this is where I think the accountability factor comes in for us. Instead of saying, how could they? Why did we let them? What about us made them feel so comfortable that they could speak to us, talk to us, and treat us in that manner? Better yet, have we been allowing them to get away with certain behavior? Because what I realize it also comes down to is that nobody has ever checked you know what I'm saying? And even us, because we're not above it. I've made my mistakes and I've had friends and family that have called me out for certain behavior that it's like, hey, you could have been nicer. Or because you're so black and white, you need to learn how to soften your tone a little bit when you speak to people because they don't speak in that way in which you speak. Do you see what I'm saying? So it all comes down to accountability for us. So before we jump to that conclusion of, well, how could so and so treat me this way? Why did we let them? Why did they think that they could get so comfortable to speak to us and treat us and disregard us in that way? Because I truly believe if it's a concern and a problem, you need to address it the first time and address it early. Because I'm all for giving grace. Grace is the first time. Grace is when you nip it in the bud. After that, because then you've already had the conversation, you have already explained, I'm not going to tolerate this. So when they then do it again, they clearly don't respect you, or they clearly do not have the wherewithal to take into consideration of, great, if I want this person in my life, I need to start changing my behavior. Because I do think that a lot of it is behavior that has been taught and we've just never been checked before. We've never had someone call, as I said, call us up, not call us out for these certain behaviors that we do. Again, accountability is a hard thing and it has to start with us, and we have to examine the contribution that we added to this situation of the dynamic. I'm not playing devil's advocate with this one because it doesn't excuse their behavior. But did we maybe say something or do something that allowed them to get comfortable? Did we maybe say something or do something or didn't say something that, if we know that that's how they treat other people, what makes you think that they wouldn't treat you in the same way? You know what I'm saying? Because we as adults are the worst. We've just never been held to accountable with certain behaviors and actions. So then for when we decide to get in a mood, right? And instead of using our words, our actions then speak for us. And sometimes our actions don't even represent us in the best light. So then it's like, hey, are you okay? What's wrong? Because you're pouting. Baby, you're 30. You're a 40 something, 50-year-old something, 70-year-old something, and you don't know how to communicate. So what we're not doing anymore is letting us off the hook. We should always be sure to stand firm in a position with people and our loved ones, platonic, romantic, familial, professional, where we stand, what we're not going to do, because that also holds us and our peace together. You know what I'm saying? You get me? So again, like there were times when I used to play detective about, well, you just didn't started acting out of this way at for no reason. So what caused to it? I'm not saying you need to go above and beyond to try and like sleuth and figure out what the rabbit hole is. But take a step back before you jump to the conclusion of it's on them in any given scenario. Also, let me say this because we're about accountability here. If the same is true of them, then the same has to be true of us. So if we know that we would not accept that behavior, let's not us also stoop to that level. Like 2025 going forward is about accountability for us. So when we know that we're in the right, then we can act as such. It doesn't mean we need to be on a put ourselves on a pedestal. But what I'm saying is, as I've said before, it's the golden rule. How would you want to be treated? So if you know that you wouldn't want this done to you, when you show up with people, and this is a recent lesson that I had to learn to bring my best self when I'm at odds with somebody, of communicating. Hey, I'm not in a good place to talk right now. Let me get myself together before we have a conversation. Hey, something bothered me earlier today about an exchange we had, or this. It's the energy that we bring. Again, letting them. let me.